You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I've been asked this question, and I speak a lot. I spoke this past weekend. I speak to Republican groups and conservative groups, and then I speak also to Rotaries, and I speak to Kiwanis, and I speak to Chamber of Commerces, and just business groups in general. I'm always asked the question, what's wrong with Washington? Well, we're going to dig a little deeper into that today, especially coming off of the last week in which we now have bills that were passed. I talked to this a little bit on Monday. But after the break, I'm going to dig a little bit more into really some of this issue. And you've heard me say it here on the podcast before that we've divorced reality and politics. I'm going to dig a little deeper into that statement and discuss what I believe we can do to overcome it, but also look at how I believe it has been infested by the media and others as we go forward. So the question is, what is wrong with Washington? Well, the old saying is we've seen the enemy and the enemy is ourselves. Yeah, that's a lot of what we're looking at. So right after the break, we're going to jump right into it. We are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been a disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market, and there have been major bank failures. And many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero-hassle, education-first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. That's what I do. So go to www.legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investment guide. And look, I've read it. You need to read it. There's so much valuable information in there. So, friends, now's the time to not roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold and precious metals can offer you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that Doug Collins sent you. You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the box stores or the shopping channels as the way they used to. They've been part of the cancel culture, so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just one product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about that. So to get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out the $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-pillow use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. There's 6-pack of towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels. You guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. All orders over $75 will see free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Collins, that's COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 today. That's promo code Collins. All right. Before the break, I said the old saying is when we've seen the enemy and the enemy is ourselves. What do I mean by that? In this era of moving away from norms and standards, let's start here. We have gotten into a society that over time has developed a self-centric dynamic. What do I mean by that? I mean that we have moved into what biblically was said, that every person did what they thought was right in their own eyes. That when teaching, and I'll go from a biblical perspective here, of believers, when they said they'll go to pastors or men who tickle their ears with what they want to hear. I'm starting biblically here, not believing that everybody is listening to this podcast, and I'm so grateful that you do, that is Christian. I believe that we have many faiths that listen to this. I've heard from you that we have. So I'm not trying to start off in a position of saying this is a Christian answer to what I'm saying. I'm saying my lens is Christian because that's who I am. But what is said there makes sense to whoever you are, whether you have faith or no faith, and no matter what that faith may look like. And that is the 2 points that were brought out is, number one, they did what was right in their own eyes. And number two, that the people would go to those, the scripture says, tickle their ears. That's an old King James version for tell them what they want to hear. This is where we're at in America right now. And it's not Republican orientated only, and it's not Democrat orientated only. It is both. Now, right now, it looks more Republican, I'll have to say, because Democrats are very, very good at towing the line. They get what they want. We've talked about this before. They march like, men in a row and women in a row. They have an overarching ideal, and that's what they're going to go for. They don't say anything else, and they'll take less than what they want. Lately, because conservatives in particular have become so frustrated with what they see in society and also in government and higher education, and you can't separate any of these, that they're now believing that we have to overturn everything all at once, that all of the backsliding, all of the degradation, all of the moving away from the traditional values that we were founded on, the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that we've moved away from, have to be corrected now. And if you don't correct them now, then the world is lost. In many ways, some of my Republican colleagues right now sound like the climate change activists who believe that if we don't change everything, basically stop all industrial production and do everything and cut our own, nose off to spite our face, that the world's going to end tomorrow. How many times have we heard that in the last 40 years? In fact, I'm old enough to remember, and that's pretty old. I can still remembering headlines in the 70s that we're concerned about an ice age. The world is getting colder. And then it was getting hotter. And then they couldn't prove it was getting hotter. So then it was climate change. And then everything becomes climate change. Now, look, you're listening to a podcast that believes that man does have a part in the climate. I do. I just don't believe that we're the predominant part. And I don't believe you're going to solve it the way that people are thinking we're going to solve it, especially if America is the only one unilaterally acting. And you say, well, we're one of the biggest suppliers. Yes, but you have industrialized countries such as China, India, a lot of Asia, a lot of even Russia, others that have never signed on or actively participate in any remediation for what we see. Then you have those that say, well, then we just need to do it ourselves. You can't do it ourselves. There are also the denyings of everything else. I use that just simply as an example, not to get into a debate here on the podcast today about climate change or anything else. Mine is simply that when I hear my conservative brethren and sistren say that if we don't fix this right now, if we don't get everything we want, everything's going to come to an end. Now, are there some very high profile issues that does indicate that our society is systemically going to change if we don't fix it? Yes, the border is one of those. The border is at this moment in time a national crisis. It is the ultimate crisis we face in this country because we stand to lose our entire identity as a nation if we cannot control our own borders. And if you have people who come from 150 plus nations who then come here and are not assimilated into the country as we have it. In other words, they bring their own values, their own ways. Again, they do what is right in their own eyes, not in the country that they've come. They all come here for freedom, but what they don't realize is our freedom was made out of the simple motto of our word, as is out of many, one. So out of a lot, we became one. As I love the old, we've made a lot of discussion on this show before about movies, and I love movies. Stripes is one of my favorite movies from Bill Murray and all back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was the movie in one of the famous scenes where he goes through his monologue that we're mutts, that we came from everywhere. We're not purebred Americans. There is no such thing as a purebred American. We're not. We have Irish, we have Scottish, we have English, we have German, we have Dutch, we have Chinese, we have Hispanic, we have Mexican, we all came together because the stars and stripes and those stars upon that actually mean something as a combined nation. We were in many ways, if you were, the folks who were rejected, the early ons in this country, my home state of Georgia was a penal colony. Let that sink in a second. But we came together, we overcame to be the shining light on the hill, to be the top of the heap, because freedom and the willingness to sacrifice our self-interest for the betterment of all, and to come together and realize that by having a society in which everyone is better, my freedoms are enhanced. My freedoms are there. My freedom of speech, my freedom of association, my freedom to not have a government that can actually turn against me and take me into court and not have a fair due process hearing and to not have those kind of things. Those were enshrined in the Constitution, that I could have those rights. But that doesn't mean that we're not a part of coming together in a country in which freedom of religion is okay and is possible, because we can have freedom that no one has to have a religion. We don't have to have a government to tell us what our religion is. Freedom of religion means that I can be Southern Baptist, or I can be an atheist, or I can worship the sign at the end of my road that says stop because I believe it is a God. Okay, that you can do whatever you want to do. Our country was founded on a moral belief that there is a God. That's just fact. So as you look at that, there become the guardrails of life that says we as a country come together from wherever we came from to make a life in a place that is free and to exercise those freedoms, that my freedoms are not impinging on your freedoms, and we get through. Now, we can then get into all the arguments of politics, of money, of government form, government size, government everything else, and that's where we begin to have the problem. Now, for many, including myself, believe that the government has gone way too large. There is no need for national interference in our education system like the Department of Education. I'm one that believes the Department of Education should not exist. They can make all of the Commerce Clause rulings and everything else they want to show that Jimmy Carter was right in making the Department of Education. You can do everything the Department of Education does now with about 20 people helping states get money that the federal government is sending to them for nutrition programs and other things. Okay, the states is where this is inherently should lie. That's my personal opinion. You may disagree, and that's fine. We can take a lot of things that the federal government does and slim it back greatly when there are multiple organizations that help people buy homes, multiple organizations that help veterans with loans. There's multiple organizations that help the homeless. I mean, they're spread across different cabinet agencies. Why are we doing this in so many different agencies? We don't need to be. We need to find one place, streamline it, make it work, and make it efficient. The one thing you never hear about government is it does things efficiently. So there are all these things, and I say all of this for you to get out there, get riled up about and talk about. And then we come down to how our government is made. It's been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all the rest. Now, as we look at this, we're a republic. I got into a large argument with Al Sharpton one day on Al's show about the fact that we are a republic and not a pure democracy. Pure democracy, one vote, majority wins. A republic is like I, who served in Congress, I represented 750,000 people. One vote representing a number of people, republic. That means that all those people who voted in my district didn't vote for me. They may have different opinions of me. They may not have voted for me. They may have wanted me out of office, but more people voted me in than voted against me, and that's why I was there. And my job was to do the best I could for all those that I represented. I made a comment many times. I said that I'm in Washington, D.C. today because 750,000 people couldn't be here. And so I'm representing them. The same is true for all the other members up there. Where we have gotten in the way is believing that the basics of economics, the basics of fact in things that we do don't adhere to life in the real world. Thus, going back to the comment that I made when we started, we have divorced politics from reality. This past week was a classic example of that. And I've talked to many members of Congress over the last few weeks about this issue of The FISA, which I think was a wrong vote. I think there should have been a warrant. I've sat in those meetings. I will tell you right now, they can get by all the examples or all the horror stories that they could give were not applicable in the sense that you could get a warrant and it not affect the case. You can do it. Look, I've been there in those classified briefings. I know what they try to sell. They can't point to one. They haven't been able to in 12 years since I've been hearing them. They can't now. But it makes you scared. That's become the politics of the day. What can I scare you with? What can I scare you with to give up some of your rights so that you'll have your freedom or you'll have your safety? I'm telling you, you're giving up your freedom to gain your safety. So again, FISA, the best thing about that bill that they passed is up in 2 years again. They can maybe try once again to fix it. You then get into the Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan monies that were just spent, $95 billion, $60 billion going to the Ukraine. I'm not going to get into the details of that bill. We spoke of that briefly earlier this week. But at the end of the day, there have been times over the last 6 months since Kevin McCarthy was removed as Speaker to now, there were times before then in which the Republicans in the United States House forgot the basic principle. The only people that matter in the House are the majority. Whether it's a 1-vote majority or a 50-vote majority, it's only the majority that matters, because at the end of the day, if something can't be passed, it's because the majority didn't stick together. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again over the last year. And I've talked to like I said, many friends in Congress are still there. And we as Republicans have left wins on the board, wins on the floor and not on the board, because we had to have perfect. Perfect, as has been said, is the enemy of good or better. I'm going to tell you right now, perfect in politics probably doesn't exist, just like perfect in marriage doesn't exist. There is the divorce of politics and reality has caused us to come to the conclusion that unless I get everything I want, then it is bad or wrong or something needs to be changed. And that will get you nowhere. There is a number of folks who will say that the rebellion of House conservatives over the last week led to the $90 billion of foreign aid. I can't not disagree in some ways. The Speaker ended up doing what the Speaker did, Mike Johnson, whatever the reason may be. He chose to side with 100 plus members of the Republican caucus and all of the Democrats to say it is beyond politics to hold this money up for Ukraine, Israel, and Gaza and Taiwan. Now, I can disagree with it all day long. I think there could have been better things. I think we could have gotten, and I have had friends in Washington tell me, we could have gotten possibly remain in Mexico. We could have gotten some other things that would have helped our own border if we could have put the 218 votes together as Republicans to do so. But if Chuck Schumer knew that there was no united House Republican vote, then he could stand firm and do nothing, especially when he had 15 to 20 votes in his pocket of Republicans in the Senate. There was no negotiating out of that. And I hear all the time members of Congress, members and friends of mine who say, we should have tried to get something. Well, you can get something if you stick together. You find one or two things and you say, this is what I can get in divided government, and do it. Or you can listen to talk show hosts or podcast hosts or TV hosts or anybody else that tells you, go out without a fight, get in there and fight. Well, what are you fighting for? To get knocked out? To where you accomplish nothing? Or are you fighting to actually be able to do something? I understand the temptation. It's easy to tell your constituents what they want to hear. But not every hill is a hill to die on. And Democrats are experiencing this. And if God forbid it flips in the House and Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker, he will have the same problem of his left flank that Republicans have with their right, because they've divorced politics from reality, except one thing. Democrats, at the end of the day, seem to have been willing to take something instead of nothing. And Republicans haven't. I've said it all along. I believe that Nancy Pelosi in her 2 terms of speakership was willing to give up the position and the power for policy. She was willing to give up the position of Speaker and the power that entailed to get the policy of things like Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, the infrastructure bill, basically which became the new Green Deal. Why? Because she knew that even if she got beat, those policies would last. Republicans haven't caught up to that concept yet. We're much more willing to go out and tell people things we can't do. And don't tell me if you just fought a little bit. There's ways to fight smartly and get things done. Most people don't realize that we gutted Obamacare with 8 different votes that Obama actually signed, but we did it in smart ways, putting it in bills and getting things that we wanted out of the things that they wanted. That's called compromise. And if you're sitting in this podcast and you're listening to me saying, Doug, you're just not fighting, you're not wanting, then I can't help you. Because more than likely, if you've not applied the same principle to your business, you probably went bankrupt. If you're not applying these same principles to your marriage, you probably are multiple divorced. Because at the end of the day, no one gets everything they want. It just doesn't happen. And especially when you have a House Republican majority that cannot put a majority of votes on the board. It's a huge difference when you can put a majority of the votes on the board. It's a huge difference when the Senate knows we'll send this back, but we've changed up, but we know that the majority in the House will stick together. And then you have the Republicans in the Senate fighting as they can from a minority position to help make those changes. If they see a unified front in the House, the minority in the Senate can then fight from a minority position, keeping it below 60, so that then the Democrats have to negotiate with us. But when they don't see majority in the House, then you have some who will go off and join the majority in the Senate to allow things to get passed. Now, I know this isn't fun for many of you that want to hear. And some of you will be mad at me, and you can go to the DougCollinsPodcast.com, you can click that email button, and you let me know. But I will say this. Donald Trump becomes president, which I'm hoping for in November. I hope that we flip the Senate. We're going to talk more about that, of course, as Election Day comes. And if we can keep the House. If we have Donald Trump in the White House, we have a majority. Probably won't be anywhere close to 60, but we have a majority in the Senate, and we have a House that stays a majority for Republicans, even if it's just one vote. Donald Trump cannot get anything that he wants done unless Republicans stick together. They have to stick together. And you're not going to get everything you want. And unfortunately in society today, whether it's the riots on the Ivy League campuses and the anti-Semitic nature of what's going on or anything else, that when people do what they want to do, what is right in their own sight, or they only run to places where they want to hear what they want to hear, it tickles their ears, then that is a society that's on decline. That's a society that can't get it together. That's a society that believes in separation is stronger than being together. And that is a problem we all have to address. So with that, go out and have a great Wednesday. I'll catch up with you again. Got a great Friday's Finest coming up. We got Chan Gailey, the rest of the Friday's Finest crew, talking about the NFL draft on Thursday night, tomorrow night. And can't wait to discuss it with you. A lot more things to do here on the Doug Collins Podcast. We'll see you next time.